Do I begin now? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to... Ladies and gentlemen, hurry. Thank you. Welcome to 60 and 60. Everybody, big round of applause for 60 and 60. Yes. Okay. Here's what's going to happen. We are going to cover this august panel up here. Has been collected by your president, soon-to-be president, Cindy Bader, and she has given each of us a charge of a certain topic that we're going to be in charge of to give you notes on. For those of you that knew about this, you brought these with you, you're going to be able to write the notes as we go. We are going to move through 60 points. We're going to do it in 60 minutes. Just in case, I need you to know up here, if you see people looking at these things here, this is actually, they've hidden very large monitors here. And over here is the timer monitor, and over there is the monitor with the speed reading notes on it that we're going to use, okay? This is where that is. If you see Phil, for instance, squinting, it's because his arms have grown suddenly short, okay? And he didn't bring his glasses. Down there on the end, we've got Sandy. You know Sandy, she's the leadership trainer for CADA. Yes, it's here for Sandy. I think we probably ought to do Phil again. This is Phil Boyd. You know, he's got great children and he can't play golf, so there you go. That's Phil. And then next to Phil, we've got, we have an administrator with us. Everybody go, oh. We have an actual principal. Everybody go, oh. We have a principal who actually makes a difference. This is a man who Billy Bob has, we didn't bring Billy Bob. We brought Bob, yeah. If you don't know Billy Bob, you ought to get to know him because he's really cool. But Bob, his alter ego, is here as a principal. He is going to talk to you about some relationships and stuff like that. This man knows his stuff, and he comes every year and stays in touch with kids. He's been a member of the CADA camp staff for 26 years probably. Next to him is somebody else, and then right here we have, it's Tyler Derman, and here's what you need to know about Tyler. Everybody say, what do we need to know about Tyler?
What do we need to know about Tyler?
He's an octodad.
Ooh.
So those of you who want to know what an octodad is, find Tyler later, because it's really quite interesting. It has something to do with Tozie's Lost and other things. Okay, I guess he's going to show you now. We're not going to have frivolity on this stage. Okay. I don't know what I'm going to do for you, Bill. That's it. Wearing the green frog, alligator, wearing the green alligator hat, and also responsible for this wonderful theme and keeping Cindy Bader happy, which everybody in the room knows who's ever worked with her is a full-time job. Let me give it up. Everybody give it up for Bill. This is good. Let's give it up for Bill. Okay. The reason I'm supposed to be doing this is that I'm doing it fast, waiting for the rest of the audience to come in, and they ask me to do it because I talk fast. And this over here is Peter Kahn, who does not talk fast. Peter Kahn, C-A-H-N, for those of you who know. And Peter Kahn can take a sentence and drag it out for about an hour and a half. So if this... They know you, Peter.
60 tips in 55 minutes.
We're almost there. If Peter goes over his time, here's the noise. Are you about ready, David? Here's the noise you're going to hear. There it is. When you hear that, that means the rest of us are going to scream, give me the mic. Okay? So that's what's going to happen. Peter Kahn's going to talk to us about the things that he is an expert on, plus he's going to talk to us about legal issues. And then this is all the way from Reston, Virginia. Can we have a round of applause for Reston, Virginia? Representing Area H. Can we have it up for Area H? There we go. Lynn Fiscus is the editor of lots of things, and she is I'm proud to tell you, she is the editor of the stuff from the Alliance for Student Activities. Many of her remarks are going to come to you via or information she's gleaned from the Advocate in that particular device. My name is Mike Smith. Here's the way it's going to work. I'm going to sit down here, and Sandy's going to lead off. She's going to finish her point. She's going to pass the mic. We're going to move right down this row, and you're going to be writing miserably and quickly. Everybody got any questions? Good, I can't see anyway, the lights are in my eyes, so we will answer those questions after it's over. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 60 in 60. Here we go.
So my first tip is for developing strong leaders, and although I think that it sometimes appears successful ASBs are random, it's really not. So you do have the opportunity to set yourself up for success and provide circumstances and opportunities for that to happen. I'm originally from the Midwest, so I kind of always thought that if I worked really hard, success would just follow, but that doesn't naturally happen. There's a lot of quotes out there that say success really only happens if someone's behind the team serving as the catalyst. So my first tip to developing strong leaders is just to stop working so hard yourself and become the catalyst for your team and become the encourager, the person who stretches, the person who challenges, and you can make your team much more powerful that way. Take it over, Phil. I've given you 13 seconds of my time.
That's awesome. Let's give her a hand. Going first is tough. Man, that's amazing. You know, my first tip is be intentional about team building. I think there's a lot of people when they start thinking about team building, they just assume that, oh, this group plays ball together, or they spend time together, they're going to become a team. And I think the more intentional you are about doing the team building, think about when should I do what type of team building. A lot of you will do a retreat at the beginning of the year. Do you do anything after homecoming? Or if you're in middle school, a major event that you guys have, get the group back together, because there's some pain through some of the big events we put on, and rebuild your team. Mid-year team building. Some of you think about with our staff. We haven't had any type of staff team building in years. A lot of times we do it in August, but people start hurting and needing some more help this time of year. If you do any team building or anything to connect people, you just got a pink slip recently to say we value you, you're important to us. So the first thing I'd encourage you to do is when you're thinking about team building, be intentional.
Wow. Thanks, Phil. I'm going to be talking about building relationships, and foundational to that, and foundational to the success of any school, I believe, is relationships, rigor, and relevance. Today we're going to focus in on the relationships piece of that. We'll talk a little bit about rigor and relevance later, but many times when you hear that in educational communities, you'll hear it as rigor, relevance, and then relationships. And I suggest that they've got that wrong. I think we need to start with relationships first. And it's the job of our activities directors to really work on doing those relationship building activities at your schools. You're so vital to the success of your schools. And we're going to take a look at some of those other issues today as we go through. It's a great pleasure to introduce the one and only Mr. Tyler Dermott, 18 seconds left. Give me a hug.
Aww.
I'm going to be talking about data today. It sounds boring, but let me start this way. I had a chance to hang out with a woman I wanted to impress, and so I went to the store to buy clothes. This is all true. I actually wanted to go buy this shirt. I went in and I tried my shirt on. It was kind of an expensive shirt. I'm colorblind. This is true. The shirt I ended up walking out of the store with was this shirt, which I was not aware was kind of a purple, pink kind of shirt. I didn't realize until after I went on my date that I looked like this. The reason I mention this is because as a colorblind person, I should have got some input from somebody else. That's the point of data, is getting input. Really, when you think about it, it's the reason I went to a proctologist when I turned 50. We need somebody to look at things you can't see from a different perspective. How you doing there, Bob? I thought that would kind of bring close to home. Thanks for the 18 seconds.
There's nothing like following a proctology joke. Okay, my piece of this thing is to talk to the spouses of activity directors, because as we all know, activity directors work way, way too hard. This hat, while it's fetching, is an example of my participation. I'm a writer. I'm most at home with a computer and nobody around me. However, I'm standing in front of all of you, and it's not a happy experience for any of us. What it's about is this: your spouse is about participating. That's their whole life, and it's what they teach their kids, and it's what the programs are about. So you need to not only understand that philosophy, you got to embrace it, take it, and make it your own. So if you got a breakfast fundraiser on Saturday, that means that you're going to be there, maybe cooking the bacon. That means that you're going to be willing to go to Costco and brave the crowds and get the croissants. So the first thing is you got to jump in with both feet and be a player. 2, 1.
Oh, you get to hear the fun legal stuff now. There needs to be a clear definition. You didn't laugh at that at all. Sorry. There needs to be a clear definition of student money. Remember that ASB money is raised by kids or donated to them, deposited in the ASB bank account. All student funds in that account should be spent, transferred, or invested according to both state law and best practice. Student money is money that's to be spent by and for the benefit of the kids who raise it. There has to be a policy in the ASB bylaws that agreed upon by student government, the advisor, the school administration. School's financial clerk should report any attempt to circumvent the, circumvent the policy. And remember, it's not uncommon to contact the district's outside auditor for a ruling.
How many of you have people on your staff or faculty who think that the activities you plan are either a waste of time or distract from the real mission of the school? Okay, I'd like to tell you that there is a growing body of research that documents the fact that involvement in student activities increases students' their grades and their attendance. And I'd like to share a couple of those research findings with you. There was a study in the Harvard Educational Review in 2002 where researchers Herbert Marsh and Sabina Kleitman found that joining more student activities and spending more time participating in them led to higher grades, more difficult courses selected, more time spent on homework, more colleges applied to, a higher likelihood of starting and finishing college, and a higher ultimate degree attained in the end. They also found that each additional hour per week spent on student activities. Mikey's giving me some of his time. Leads to a 0.45 increase in GPA and 13 more minutes spent on homework per night.
Yes, and by the way, you can find that in the Alliance stuff, okay? Just to quickly do mine then, so we've got time. I'm here to talk about all school assemblies. One of the big things that happens with all school assemblies, for those of us who do them, is that many faculties and administrators do not understand the importance of them or why we should do it. Ladies and gentlemen, right now in our culture, only behavior we are teaching kids for large group behavior is pep rally behavior. So many of our graduations look like pep rallies instead of something more solid. You need to, and the staff needs to, help kids get trained in how to behave in large groups. Some of the things they're going to need large groups for. They're going to need large groups for going to plays. They're going to need them for going to concerts that are not rock and roll concerts. They're going to need them for learning stuff in different union halls and things like that. So what I'm suggesting is that you need to give your staff and faculty some really good reasons why you should have all school assemblies.
Back to developing strong leaders. And here you go, Phil. My second tip is allowing the students to develop a mission, because hard work is a prison sentence if it has no meaning. How many people out there get paid an extra $10,000 to do ASB? Yeah, exactly. But if I gave you an extra $10,000 to be a toll booth collector, would you switch positions? Well, probably not a good economy to ask that question, but mostly not, because we believe that our job has a lot of meaning, and the students need to be invested in that as well. So have them develop their own mission. And I would suggest doing this extremely early in the year, during the summer, and then every project that they decide to do should somehow pertain to the mission that they are now all invested in. So when someone asks them to be there at 6 in the morning to help set up for something, they know the why of why they're there. It's really easy to teach the how to do something, but unless they're invested in the why you're doing it, it's never going to be quite as successful. People support that which they help create, so allow them to develop the mission.
When you do team building, probably one of the things over the years I've watched, I've been asked to come and do retreats, different things, and oftentimes I see the person who hired me, whether it be a principal at a staff meeting or it be the activities director, and they're like, this is cool, and they're standing off to the side. And one of the most powerful messages you can give to your group about the value of building community is to participate yourself. And some of you might think, well, but I'm facilitating, so I got to set them up, I got to keep time. Find a way to jump in and listen to tell the story, because they need to know your story. I think a lot of times there's this assumption that, oh, well, anything we create, she's going to support, or he's going to support, but they don't realize that every time they come up with a new idea, a new activity, that means more time for you. That means one more night out for you, or one more weekend away from your family. If they understand that, well, right now I'm supporting my parents because they're going through something, or I'm going through something with my own kids, just allow them to hear your story by participating as well.
Building relationships, part 2, student to student. Schools cannot begin to emphasize rigor and relevance until they have this in place. And it's important that the students feel safe. They feel safe on their campus, they feel safe in their classrooms, they feel safe in their relationships with one another. And some excellent ways that you can bring that to your school are through some programs like Safe School Ambassadors, Link Crew. I understand there's a new Link Crew piece for middle schools called Web, is that right? Great program, great program. Help kids feel safe and connected to your school. Peer counseling is also another one. Peer mediation, random acts of kindness, and character counts. And we have a program at our school called Yes I Can, which partners general education students with special education students, and the results of that has just been magic. And I'd love to talk to you about that personally at another time. We don't have time right now.
Thanks, Bob. That's good. When we think about data, we typically think in education about attendance, those kinds of quantitative data. What we're talking about is something a little bit deeper, qualitative data about ourselves and the programs we have. If this represents your life, this circle, the outside would be the shallow things. As we move to the middle of the circle here, would be the deeper parts, your hopes, your dreams. Well, as you know, we all have blind spots. If you're taking notes, draw a circle, put a little bunch of dots in here, and put blind spots, or you can shorten it to BS if you'd like. And what we have is, we tend to lie to ourselves. The lies we tell ourselves are to protect ourselves from letting other people see our blind spots. Often you may think, how can we let other people see our blind spots when we don't know we have them? But as we all understand the psychological community, that we tend to avoid allowing even ourselves to see things that are hurtful or painful. Super Bowl ad, $10 million they spent last Super Bowl a year ago. They put on an advertisement with polar bears with speaking Japanese. They didn't ask the right people, and I'll get back to them.
Okay, let me talk about empathy for a minute. And this is a great example. Mama told you there's going to be days like this. What she didn't tell you is it's going to happen to your spouse, and you're going to have to deal with it. At the end of the day, it helps if you can relate to the actual struggles and hopefully the triumphs that they're having at school. In order for that to happen, you have to understand exactly what it is that they do. And frankly, that takes a little bit of time, and it takes a lot of listening. Pay attention to who the players are and how that impacts their job and how it impacts their happiness. While we've got a wonderful administrator up here, that doesn't carry through to every school in the land, as you all know. So it's a good idea to know if a big meeting is coming up, if a board meeting is coming up. At the end of the day, you may come home really happy or maybe a little stressed out. It's better if you know what's coming.
Kissing up to an administrator. The questions that I'm answering are from members. They came in the last 4 or 5 months, so realize that they're individual. The next one really is an interesting question. If you look at the issues on it talks about teachers and booster clubs raising money and getting in the way of what ASB is doing. There needs to be a policy approved by the administration and perhaps the district in terms of how fundraisers are controlled on the campus. It's very difficult when teachers go out and they buy, in this case they bought suckers from C's, and we're selling them to kids in the classroom. If you're from California, you know pretty well that's probably illegal. And that's really the issue. There has to be a policy that's approved by the administration so that everyone follows it.
My next tip regards tying more activities to the curriculum in your school. A lot of what your students are doing in your programs reinforces the things that they're learning in their classrooms. I went on a California State Board of Education website and found a math objective, for example. Students know, derive, and solve problems involving the perimeter, circumference, area, volume, lateral area, and surface area of common geometric figures. What in the world does that have to do with student activities? Think about decorating for a dance. Your kids have to figure out perimeter of the room, how many rolls of streamers they need to buy. They have to figure out how to fill a net full of balloons and what the volume of those balloons is, so how many balloons do they need to buy, and so on and so on. You could list lots of things like that. You never really probably thought of your dance decorating as a math lab, but it really is. And there's all kinds of other curriculum areas that your kids are practicing in your classroom. So your critics haven't thought of that either. It's up to you to make that connection.
Back to all school assemblies. I'm an advocate of all school assemblies, obviously self-serving, but by the same token, what I believe to be true is that we who do this for a living don't do anything, we don't tell them anything that you don't already know or don't already tell them, but we have two advantages. We're from out of town, and we probably have a clipboard. So boom, that'll be it. And there's an opportunity to offer kids information from a different source. It'll be the same information, but it's valuable information, and they oftentimes won't get it from you because they see you all the time. So I suggest that's the reason that you need to do that. The second thing about it is, though, you need to have a follow-up to it. There needs to be follow-up things. For instance, I've been in places where most of the people who do this for a living actually have on the website follow-up questions and things like that that you can give to your school to faculty to process. They also have opportunities to write descriptives of what happened, to tell you about narratives about what happened, and then of course you can always do a written evaluation. Follow-up and materials make it more valuable, make the moment last.
And back to developing strong leaders once again, my third tip is instead of teaching them how to do the project, what we should probably focus on is how to teach the skills that they need to do that project. That way when they go from project to project, you didn't teach them how to do Red Ribbon Week, you taught them how to communicate, and they can pass that knowledge on from project to project. They did a survey with college professors who taught freshmen, only freshmen, and they said, how are the freshmen coming out of high school these days? Do they have reading, writing, arithmetic skills? And the freshman college professor said that they're actually getting better with the academic part, but getting less in things like, and they created a list, and they called it a Skills for Life list. And it included things like communicating, prioritizing, taking initiative, self-assessing. And I thought that's exactly what we teach in student leadership all the time. So I tried to start focusing on teaching those skills along the way. Then when it went from project to project, it wasn't just about the project, it was how to pass the skills.
Great. Back to team building. Please understand there's a big difference between team building and icebreakers. Many of you have done a little activity with human bingo where you have to run around the room and you have to get people, someone wearing glasses, someone who's born in another state. Cool, great little icebreaker. What turns it into a team builder, however, is when there's a conversation or a story or some type of disclosure shared during that experience. If you've used that activity I mentioned, a lot of times people don't talk to the person. You have glasses, your name's Tyler, you're, whatever it is, and all of a sudden they're writing these things in their box. As you design your team building activities, stop and think, how do we create a conversation? A fun was give everybody a penny, they look at the year on that penny, and they tell something significant that happened during that year. So maybe it's 1997, and that year, this happened in my life. Now in that group, a story comes out, and we start to connect.
Back to building relationships, it's the responsibility of each staff member to develop meaningful relationships with the students in your schools. One of the ways we can do that is a program called 5 Students to Watch. And each semester, each teacher selects 5 students that they're going to target for success. And they make sure that their homework is done, that they're studying for exams, they stay in communication with the parents, they make sure that the kids make good choices, and they help them become good citizens out on the campus as well. Another one of my favorite activities in building relationships between staff and students is Lunch Bunch. Todd Aerosmith is an amazing ASB director, and he brought this to West Ranch High School. And during, what'd you say? There's a kiss over there. And during the Lunch Bunch activity, each teacher gets to bring 2 students to lunch. And then they stand up at lunch and they tell why they brought the students and celebrate their time together. And then they get a certificate and their picture with their teacher. Kids remember that forever. Also, advisory is another great way to...
Sorry, Mark. In order to grow, we must be willing to suffer. The reason most of us get the feedback we get, most of us get the feedback we get because we want to feel good about ourselves. The Super Bowl ad, they asked a group of people who were their friends and their family if it was a good ad. What they didn't realize is by having an Asian accent with these polar bears, that they ended up offending all of the Asian community. They didn't want to hear that ahead of time because they'd already spent almost $900,000 thinking about, it's money, I don't know that, making it. I wrote a book for 4 years, and the guy who was guiding me through this said I needed to get feedback. The truth is I didn't want the feedback I got because it hurts. My first sentence of the book was going to be, I like butterflies. And I gave my first chapters to people, and the comment I got back was, is this book for sissies? Oh. I didn't like that. I had a whole idea. We tend to want to get feedback that's going to make us feel good. Consequently, we look for the wrong answers. We need to be willing to hear the truth if we're going to grow.
Okay, I believe this tip is dance. and for me, this one really hurts. Some people got 2 left feet, I have 4. That said, I've gone to dances with Cindy and I've embarrassed her in public. If any of you want some proof, come tonight and you'll see it. Sometimes you just have to take one for the team. If you find yourself going to a homecoming dance, here are a few tips that'll help you survive that particular experience. Bring a tape measure that glows in the dark so you can measure the distance between the couples. While you're at it, bring latex gloves. Resist the phrase, "What kind of frickin' music is that?" And especially around young ladies, do not utter this one. "Do you think her parents saw the dress she's wearing?"
Brother. This came from a new advisor. If you're a new advisor, you totally understand this question. You get into a role and people go, "That's not how we used to do it." Or, "Gee, I didn't think that's what student activities was all about." Let's define student activities. Student activities is the whole ball of wax: athletics, fine arts, performing arts, student activities, clubs and organizations. And so every stakeholder, whether it's a parent, a community member, an administrator, a board member, whoever, teachers, they all have different ideas of what this thing should be. You really need to have a questionnaire, simple questionnaire for all these stakeholders. And they all come in with, really, what do you believe student activities should do and be all about? And then put them together and come up with some general broad definition of what student activities at your school should be like. Oh, and remember, you can't please everybody.
Have you ever heard the phrase, "If you can't beat them, join them"? I suggest you keep that one in mind with your faculty. Your activities are hopefully not going to go away, so why not capitalize on the excitement and the enthusiasm the students have for the activities you plan by tying those in with their curriculum. Before a major activity that's coming up, let's say a canned food drive, get with the faculty and brainstorm some ways that they can tie the lessons in their classroom to the activity that's going on. For example, with a canned food drive, health classes or family and consumer science classes could review nutrition information and the effect on the body of undernourishment. Your social studies classes could invite local government representatives to discuss relevant issues regarding hunger in your community. Journalism students could write articles for the school newspaper that profile the agency being helped with some human interest angles. Speech or drama classes could produce creative announcements encouraging participation in the food drive. Business students could visit the food pantry or organizations which the food is being donated to talk with staff members.
In terms of all school assemblies, the nightmare is this. They bring in the entire student body, they put them in a gym that was built in 1939 by the WPA, and then all the teachers gather in one corner, cross their arms, walk out the door, and the principal says, "Here's Mike. He's going to motivate me." So, the way you solve all of those problems is, you know, a few things that need to happen for introductions. Here's the first one, and this one seldom happens. I'm sure my friends on the stage have suffered with it as well. And that is, we need the administrator an authority figure to smile, that would be good, and to calm the audience and wait until the audience is quiet. All too often we're in such a hurry to get it started so that we can get them out on time that we do not do the wait until they're quiet. Secondly, the authority figure should congratulate them on loading the gym and what a wonderful way they did it. And thirdly, he should or she should introduce a student who's going to introduce the speaker, and that student should have hopefully heard the speaker or at least gone on the website and has something to do.
Back to developing strong leaders. My fourth one is guiding them through practice every chance you get. Practice isn't the thing you do once you're good, it's the thing you do that makes you good. This is sort of Tyler's point about getting the critique back. It's the same thing with practicing. We tend to do the things that we enjoy doing, which we're already good at, but the only way that you will actually attain to being good at something was practicing, and that's the hard part. So instead of always pigeonholing your students into doing the same things over and over as into what they are good at, make them stretch and come out of the box. This comes from, if anybody's a Malcolm Gladwell fan out there, he wrote a book called Outliers, and he came up with the 10,000 hour rule. And they actually did studies on everyone from the Beatles to Bill Gates to professional hockey players to even master criminals. And although it appeared people were suddenly an expert at something, backtracking for every single one of them, it was almost 10 hours they had put in before they became the sensation that they were.
That's cool. Some of you are like, what was the name of that book? It was called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Great book. Hey, the next one I have from team building is sometimes use familiar stuff. You're always like, okay, I gotta go to a new session, I gotta get something new. Go back and think, what did I use 2 or 3 years ago that was really good? And also invite your students to lead some of the activities. That allows you to participate, but it also gives them an opportunity to be in front of their peers. But before you do that, talk to them specifically, back to intention, is how are we going to use this activity to build community? What's going to happen at the end of this activity that's going to cause a conversation that we may forget the activity or go, that was really fun, but I won't forget what Sandy shared with me. Or when Bob told me that story, now I remember next time I see him, I'm going to connect it. Team building, so different than ice breaking, is going back to the relationship that the connection is happening. Whether it's about food, whether it's about play, whatever it is, it's back to the story.
As important as it is to build good relationships in our school, student to student, staff to staff relationships are important. Ways that we can do that are by celebrating through what I do in my school is great news emails. In the subject line it says great news, that's all it says. And they're the first emails I'm told that teachers on our campus and faculty members and classified staff open because they want to see what the great news is. Somebody's getting married, somebody had a baby. Another great activity is Grub Club. Once a quarter we get together and a different department feeds the whole school. We have 96 teachers and it's a great event to get everybody together. Our ASB director puts together a wonderful program at the end of the year and at the beginning of each year at the Welcome to the Ranch dance and at the Last Chance dance where we bring our staff members before the kids get there. So all those big inflatable things that you've already paid for the kids to play on at the dance, our staff members' children get to play on that uninterrupted by the big high school kids. And I can't stress enough the importance of sharing adult beverages with your staff members.
All of us know in here that we've learned some of our greatest lessons from the pain we've been through. And it's ironic that most of us want to avoid pain. I'm not suggesting we go out and try to experience as much pain as we can, but if we're going to try to grow, we need to get feedback that's going to be honest, even if it's brutally honest. In our programs, not too quick to blame others who don't like what we've done, but to really listen to that data. The beauty of that kind of pain is it leads to, I call it the lovely pain, because it ends up leading to growth in our relationships, in our lives professionally. For me, I did 6 rewrites of this book. I sat with Tarana Harris, who's a producer from the Oprah Winfrey Show, and I told her after 4 years, you know, I love telling stories. That's what I've discovered in this 4 years. I don't like giving advice. I like my stories to be the point. And she said, that's important data. I said, what do you mean? She said, maybe you shouldn't write a parenting book. I said, I've worked 4 years on it and I give parenting seminars. What are you saying? She said, listen to the data. So I'm no longer doing a parenting book. I'm going to write a short story book and I'm excited about it.
I think Tyler's on to that whole pain thing because I'm getting a little bit of it now. I'm getting a little more of it now. Okay, listen versus advise. At the end of the day, sometimes your partner in crime is going to arrive at home and they will appear anxious to talk. And they will turn loose with a torrent of description regarding what has taken place. It's always important to listen. Sometimes it may be important to give them advice or help solve the problem. But it's also critical to know the difference between doing that and simply listening. You need 2 good ears. Sometimes they need a shoulder to cry on. But sometimes they just want you to listen to what the challenges were that particular day. I know that some of this boils down to the traditional differences we have between women and men. I'm trying to get in touch with my feminine side, and that's why I wore this hat. But at any rate, you do need to kind of pick up the signs. Do they want the help, or they just need you to listen?
Oh, someone needs a hug. All right, serious issue. Parents, teachers, administrators putting pressure on kids to spend money for things they want to do. Please understand that it's called student government, student activities, not called adults or parent or booster clubs. And you have to understand that student government is just that, it's student government. As an activity director, one of your main jobs is to be a buffer between the adults and the kids. You're the one that's selected or you were volunteered when you were out of the room to be the activity director. And the idea is that it's your job to make sure that kids aren't pressured unduly to spend money on things adults want. It's kids' money. And if you can't get it done yourself, you go to your administrator, like Bob Vincent here, who wouldn't allow that to happen. Please understand the administrator has the control.
I mentioned earlier the research on the academic side of involvement in student activities, and there's a lot more of that out there. I wish I had time to share it. But participation also has a positive impact on social development of students. We all know this. There's also research out there that proves it. There was a 1995 study by Zill, Nord, and Loomis that found that 10th graders who did not participate in extracurricular activities were 57% more likely to drop out than students who participated between 1 to 4 hours a week. 1 to 4 hours a week. Just that level of involvement helped students stay involved in school and not drop out. 57% more likely. The same study found that 10th graders who did not participate in extracurricular activities were 49% more likely to have used drugs and 37% more likely to become teen parents. Really strong research in that area. One other thing I don't have time to talk about, but if you haven't yet looked into Search Institute and their 40 developmental assets, check it out.
Excellent advice. And back to all school assemblies. We have an introduction that was done hopefully either off the web, because most of the people you'll bring in have introductions that are canned, but the best introduction is an introduction that's done by a student or who has actually seen us speak before. Now we're in the gym. Those of you who do not have auditoriums, I believe I can speak again for the profession when I say we prefer to have the audience looking at us. It's tough when you put them on both sides. To that end, most of us will actually do 2 assemblies so that we can have them on one side. I've had great success, and so have my friends, by bringing them down on the floor, had half the student body sitting on the floor. Most professional speakers can handle and hold the attention of people long enough that when you put them all down on the floor and facing you, you can make it quick for them. The other thing is the sound system. I don't care who built your sound system in the gym. If you've got a band director who's got that sound system that he or she uses out in the field, that's the one we need. Bring it in, point it at them, we'll have a successful experience.
Amen, brother.
Amen, brother. Thank you.
And back to student leadership development, is the 5th one is empowering the students to make the decisions and allowing them to fail, which this was the hardest one for me because I am a perfectionist, and I always felt that every project was a reflection of me, but you have to realize that you're teaching and you're guiding, you're not doing the project yourself. I Googled failure, and this is the picture that came up. So I thought that was funny. It's like, I do often feel like a train wreck about to happen when you're doing ASB projects. But I also taught history, and I thought, well, I don't take the test for them at the end. And again, in teaching history, I didn't expect every one of them to get an A on every test, but for some reason with student leadership, you just feel that everything should be perfect along the way. And it is a teaching process. So I always loved it when the student leaders would send out some memo, and then every English teacher would email back with every grammatical error that was in the memo. It's a teaching process. So my theory for that is if you say to yourself, if you want something done yourself, do it right. That's wrong.
Don't you love to ask people stuff? I asked a little kid, what's your favorite color? He goes, camo. We were in Kansas. I asked a kid one time, what's your name? He says, Larry No-No. And you remember, how many little kids, all they hear from their parents is Larry No-No. Well, how many of your students feel the same way about your administration? ASB, no-no. I think they need to have a relationship with the school leaders. And what would happen if you invited your administration to come to part of the retreat or into ASB during some of the team building stuff so that they can get to know them besides the, no, we can't have a bonfire, remember in Texas, or remember we can't, because oftentimes there's a perception that the school leadership has that the students don't understand, but given the opportunity to create a relationship with them, include your bookkeeper, the other people that work in your group, so they get to know them beyond this person who serves them. They become real to them.
Building relationships, school to community. I like to talk about that it's not your mother's PTA anymore. We need to go about doing our relationships with our parents differently. At our school, we have what's called Starbucks with the principal. and I meet with the parents in our community at the local Starbucks. We leave the school, get away from there, and we meet for about an hour, about every 6 weeks, and have a great time. Out of that Starbucks with the principal came the idea that we want to do some parenting workshops. And so this past year we invited Tyler Dermott to come speak at our school, do assemblies at our school, and then that night he talked about parenting with our parents. Tyler's written a great book that I want to encourage him to keep writing and working on, even though he doesn't want to. Butterflies, yeah, it's Butterflies. And I've known Tyler for over 20 years, and I never knew how much BS he had into him until I read the book. In fact, I read the book a year ago today at the CADA Convention. And it's called BS, Bite-Sized Wisdom for Parents. And he's full of BS, and get the book if you don't have it already, and get Tyler to come to your school and meet with your parents.
You can keep going about that stuff. You know, I didn't know his name until we said goodbye. And to be honest, I didn't want to be there that day, and I had no idea that Manuel would be sobbing into my neck while I held him in my arms. I met him, he was in the third row of an assembly, Continuation High School. He tested me right away, girlfriend leaning back between his legs, joking with his friends, leaning forward, kissing her neck, talking out loud. I stopped, I told him that was inappropriate. I thought he might, and he did. He tested me again. I had to stop. I knew he wouldn't respect me if I didn't. I had him leave, I had him stand on the side of the gym. It took him a half a minute to get there. He started to soften as I spoke. We spoke about choices that day. I was done, everyone clapped. I walked over, stood next to him, and it surprised me because this same kid literally threw himself at me, wept into my neck, and said, "Those truths changed my life." That's a quote.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about language for a minute, or lingo. Your average person knows what a rally is, but a rally commissioner is somewhat of a mystery. To understand what's going on at school and thus to help your main squeeze, it helps if you speak the language. For instance, Renaissance Gold Club member is not a credit card miles program, nor is it a strip club. ICC and ASB are not agencies in Washington, D.C. And stucco is not a mispronunciation of what your house is made of. Take the time to learn the jargon, and you will find it's much easier to understand the kinds of trials and tribulations and issues that they're bringing home, and thus you can become either a nice shoulder to cry on or a problem solver.
I get to have his last 5 seconds. Students' First Amendment rights are clouded by our opinions. In the case of a religious club, for instance, the Equal Access Act dictates which clubs and organizations can exist on campus. Once we allow one type of club that is not tied to the curriculum, we can't reject other clubs because we don't want it. A religious club is just as valid as a ski club. Fees, for instance, are clubs that are affiliated with a national charter, such as National Honor Society, do require kids to pay a fee, a membership fee. Most local clubs don't have fees. We want kids involved, and so we shouldn't be charging them to become involved in activities. There are a number of rules related to fees and court decisions and Attorney General's opinions. And the best thing to do if you haven't already gotten one is to buy a Big Map manual down in the store and look at the laws that are related there. Don't worry about the other stuff, just look at the laws.
Teaching, goal setting, problem solving, conflict resolution, communication skills, and all the rest of the things that students need to be able to do to pull together an activity and make it happen isn't an easy task. As Sandy alluded to, it's a lot easier to just do it yourself. But teaching those students those skills is something that's going to benefit them for the rest of their lives. If you're familiar with the Partnership for 21st Century Skills, they have identified 6 key elements of 21st century learning, and among those are things like critical thinking and problem-solving skills, communication skills, creativity and innovation skills, collaboration, contextual learning, and information and media literacy skills. As I read through that list, were you thinking, we do that, we do that, we do that? This is real stuff that's going to impact your students' lives for the rest of their lives.
Foundation of most good education is clear desired outcomes and clear expectations. We do not, however, do that when it comes to large group gatherings. I suggest that you can do that in a number of ways, but the easiest way is to involve your faculty in teaching clear expectations of behavior in assemblies. PEP assembly is different than an assembly where you come to learn about some important things. We need to make that differentiation in the mind of the students before they get into the assembly. At the assembly, we also need to help structure it so that they can win. We put out a thing that's available in your bookstore called Helping Them Win. It talks about when you have a group of kids, you know where they're going to go. They're going to go up the last row, sit in the back so that they're comfortable, and they're going to talk, and the sound system doesn't reach up there. All kinds of problems you already know exist. Since you know those things exist, build in solutions to them. Move them around, put them in different places. Get the faculty to quit sitting or standing along the wall with their arms folded and have them participate with you as well. State the expectations, make them clear.
And tip number 6 for developing strong leaders is celebrate successes and have random fun. I know when you go to, I always thought this when you would go to a high school basketball game, you would watch the person going up and down the court and the crowd's cheering and yelling their name, and the person who then has the ball is very inspired to do better, and then you would go to the school play, and after the play was over, everyone would stand up and clap and give flowers to the cast members. And I thought, well, that doesn't just happen naturally with student leadership. So I can remember after our first homecoming, you go back to campus on Monday morning and it just appears nothing even happened. And I remember a student knocked on the door in the utopian world that I live in my head. He said, you know, we wanted to thank you, so we've organized a big thank you rally. So we'd like you to come outside and join hands as we sing, you know, Kumbaya, my Lord, and thank ASB for the homecoming. And that didn't happen. He said, hey, my money got stuck in the soda machine, and do you have my $1 back? So I realized that it was up to us to create our own internal successes and have random fun to motivate.
I need to give you more time. You got great notes. I'm like, go, keep going, Sam. And here's another thing. Catherine Scott wrote a book recently, well, a few years ago, called Fierce Conversations. And I think we all want, you were talking about feedback a little bit ago, and honestly, at our core, we want the feedback. We're scared to ask for it and sit there and listen to it. And if we really want our organizations to have fierce conversations and to really get to the place where we can say, oh, we can get better, the only way we get that is through trust. And the only way we get to a place of trust is through connection, which comes through team building. And so you go back to that intentional piece of, what are we going to do as we build our communities, we build our team that allows us to get to a place of deep trust so that I know if you and I disagree this time, it doesn't mean you're a bad person next week, next year, or 10 years from now. How many times do you look across the staff room and go, I hate that person? Someone goes, why? We disagreed in 1997. Because what have we done to build trust, sense, or build a sense of community? So those fierce conversations.
Building relationships with student leaders and with administration and with staff. Earlier this year, our president, Cindy Bader, gave me a great idea. She said, have your student leaders come to your faculty meetings and start your faculty meetings by having your student leaders talk to the faculty and tell them what's coming up next in the area of student activities. We've done it every month at our faculty meeting, and it's been great. Great dialogue between the student leaders and the faculty, and great experience for the student leaders as well. It's also a great idea to invite the principal to lunch once in a while to your ASB and have lunch with your executive council. Something we started this year also is that I started a program where we have lunch once a month. We eat a lot at our school. We have lunch once a month with the editors. And we get together with the newspaper, the yearbook, the TV production editors, and we get together and have some really great conversations about the direction that they're going with their programs, and the ASB is also involved in that.
The highest recall of memory, they tell us, is associated with an emotional event or an emotional feeling. The reason I told you about Manuel is because that would be the story that their activities director should be telling over and over again. Because it's a story about a person. I'm guessing you're more likely to remember his story than if I just talked about the statistics and the content of my subject. Why? Stories are powerful. Think of your job as two things. Putting on an incredible activities program, and secondly, telling stories about what you're doing. If people don't see the relevance and the value of what you're doing, it's probably because you're not telling them. Think of that. Stories are incredibly powerful. This is why instead of when they're raising money for children in the developing world, they don't say 40,000 children died this week of poverty. They say, here's little Lisa. Her mom and dad are dead of AIDS, and they show us a picture why. Our stories associate us with emotions when they're connected to people. Become a storyteller.
Okay, budget time. Now, we're not going to talk about money, so everybody can just breathe freely. This one is really about common sense, which today doesn't seem like it's common enough. When your love toy requires assistance, the last thing you want to tell them is you don't have the time. For instance, I knew that this convention was coming up, and I knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime event for Cindy, and I knew that everything I wanted to do to make it right for her, make it special. So I told the people that I do work for, hey, I won't be around, don't call me, don't email me, I'm unavailable. I now don't have a job. So understanding that when the event is happening, have a look at the calendar. If homecoming is coming up, have an idea of what goes with that. Know when your help is likely to be needed so that you're not at the office, you're not in a meeting someplace. And also give yourself a little bit of wiggle room so that you can actually accomplish something during that particular time as well.
Most activity directors don't have a real job description for the activity part of their job. You need to do that. You need to sit with your chief administrator and work out and identify what your job is, because the expectations of everybody says, hey, that wasn't my job, that is something I'm supposed to do. And so you work out with them, what is your responsibility? What are your responsibilities? What decisions do you make? And then what decisions on student activities does the administrator make? And then lastly, what decisions do you make together? You do that with kids as well. What is the kids' responsibility? What really is their job as student activities? Do they just put on activities, or do they work on the culture and climate of the campus? Do they meet with the administrators, as Bob suggested? And what does the administrator expect student council to do? What role do they have on the campus?
Raise your hand if your ASB has a public relations program. Okay, I only see a few hands out there, but guess what? All of you deal with your publics, so you have public relations. Okay? Thank you for that bingo. Whether you know it or not, every single interaction you have with your publics creates an image or a brand. A sloppily painted poster with misspelled words sends a negative image. A well-organized, well-run event sends a positive image. Lack of communication with people who need to know your plans creates frustration and a negative image. You need to start thinking about the messages your group is sending and work to make sure that those are positive images. Think about all the different publics you relate with. You relate with your faculty, your staff, your administration, your school board, your parents, your community, your students. Develop positive messages in all of those areas and create a positive brand for your ASB.
Meanwhile, back in the gymnasium, we have all of these people in there and we have to get them out. There's lots of ways. The most famous one is, that's it, see you later, bye. However, it is really a good idea for your rally commissioners and people like that to have an exit strategy for everybody else. Of course, thank the speaker. Standing ovations aren't required, but I think they're probably really nice to get when that happens. And then they need to move out in some kind of orderly fashion. The best thing, though, to remember is, and this is the tip, it needs to go back to the administrator, in my opinion. That is going to, from the speaker to the administrator, puts the tone back in, then allows some modicum of control while you exit the place. Whatever's going to happen follow-up-wise can happen after that. Ladies and gentlemen, all school assemblies are an excellent way for you to make points, as in make points that they need to know with student bodies, because you bring people in from out of town and you teach the correct behavior.
And number 7 for developing strong leaders is embracing the struggle, because it's a journey, but you don't have to do it by yourself. How many people are feeling much more inspired and excited about their job because they're here at CADA now? Exactly. I remember 7 years ago after my first CADA going back to my class and being very excited and inspired, but what I had forgot was my students were still just at school having their normal life, and I was the one who came back differently. So if you want your students to feel the same inspiration and excitement, you need to also send them out to have the same feelings. So yes, it is expensive to send them to things, but if you want to invest in them, you need to at least send them to area conferences, leadership development training, however it is that you get it. Any Wicked fans out there who've seen Wicked? Yeah, it's the moment where Glinda tries to convince Alphaba to keep coming with her, and Alphaba looks at her and she says, I've done all that I can do, and now it's up to you. I'm limited, well then they break out into the song Unlimited, but I'm a bad singer.
Oh, I'll give you my minute if you'll sing. How many things can you sing? You go, girl. So, hey, and the next thing about building community is stop every once in a while, just look around your campus and just look at how many kids are alone, how many adults are alone, and think, how do we build outside? You've heard little bits and pieces, but get back to that intentionality. I was in a little school in Oregon a couple years ago, and I asked the principal, what's the coolest thing you guys do? And he said, you know what? We have support groups. I said, what? He said, 7 or 8 small groups meet every week, a group of kids whose parents have drug issues. He said, then we had a group of kids who had lost a parent, and then we had a group, he said, our 7th group is a group of kids who said, I'm tired of eating alone. Oh. And they developed a support group, and as I've shared this, I've traveled the country, people are like, wow. And the only way it's going to happen is if you're intentional about it, because you're right. So who's going to open the room? Who's going to be there? But I think if you look around and go, what kind of support groups can we build in our little school community? People are going to thrive. They're going to do better.
Building traditions are an important part of any great student activities program. One of the things I love about CADA, this is my 32nd year of coming to CADA, one of the things I love about it is meeting first-year people that are here. And I met Victor. Victor's over here. I met Victor this week, and Victor is the principal of a brand new school that's going to open next year. And he needs to start building traditions at his school. And whether your school is brand new or whether it's 100 years old, it's time to start building traditions and legacy at your school. And you do that, it's very important for kids, because you know so much in our students' lives today is unsettled. They don't have the same things happen in their lives all the time. So maybe mom and dad are splitting up. Maybe they've lost their home to foreclosure. There's lots of things going on in their lives. But the one thing they can always count on is at the end of the year, we always have the last chance dance. And that's important to kids to have that foundation piece that's there for them.
Do you want to tell Victor to hire me to speak?
Yes.
Victor? Oh, my time started. I'm more important. Storytelling is already a part of our culture. I went to buy some wine. I'm not much of a connoisseur. I know I like Pinot Noir because it's kind of mellow. And there's 4 wines to choose from, all about the same price. I looked at the labels, didn't really know. They talked about rose hips and all that stuff. And I found one that said this: our grandparents left us this vineyard in their will. My brother and I decided to do the best we can. We hope you enjoy this bottle of wine. A story. Guess which one I bought? We connect with stories. At the curriculum roundtable this afternoon, I'm going to be giving 5 secrets to I'm going to be giving 5 secrets to good storytelling, but here's just one for you. Choose a detail to tell. Keep it simple. The story of Manuel, it was very simple, about a kid who got in trouble and his heart was softened. Find the detail, cling to it, and make it personal. Keep your stories simple. That makes them more powerful. Bill?
Thank you, Tyler. Okay, let's talk about something that is very dear to my heart, and that is celebration. Celebration is very apropos for this particular event because in the spirit of New Orleans and in New Orleans, celebration is a way of life, and that's one of the reasons it's my favorite city. So you want to get in the habit of celebrating little and big things. So much of what your sex monkey does at work has to do with celebration. So you've got to get in the spirit. And while student activities directors teach students about how important setting goals are and achievements are, very seldom does anybody tell you guys you're doing a great job and what you're doing is really important. So maybe it falls to us as spouses to pick that up a little bit. So when something good happens for them, cook dinner, take them out, get a bottle of bubbly, give a little foot rub, give a little rub somewhere else.
Just don't do it with student money. You can come here with student money, though. This is really 2 questions, and I'm not going to not going to dwell on it. The first answer is yes. The second question, second part of the question, deals with investing in, how do you invest student money? There is a section of Ed Code, 48933, 48933, it'll be at the bottom of your screen, and that tells you how to spend student money. You cannot spend money, you cannot buy a mutual fund like AIG. That is not a good idea with student money. One district did that, however, and that was $14,000 for each school. They're in trouble now. But be very careful.
It's easy to get caught up in the fun and the frenzy of student activities and forget that there's really more to it than the fun. But I believe that students who participate in your ASB programs are learning things that will affect their lives every bit as much as what they're learning in the classroom. Let me tell you quickly about a student I had back at the Missouri school that Sandy and I both taught at, named Pat. He was in my practical English class, a class where the kids were just happy to get their D so they could get their credit and graduate. And when I first met him as a sophomore, he was not involved in anything, just sliding through school. Well, he got involved, ended up being in my leadership class, being in student council, and I only have 20 seconds, so I can't give you all the details, but it turned his life around, it really did. He got so involved, his grades improved, he ended up going on to college, and now he's a successful contributing member of society, and it literally changed his life. So never forget that what you're doing with your students in your ASB programs, and all the students on campus really, is life-changing.
Wow. You could have had my minute, because I have decided a long time ago never to read something that I have written for you. It says, always have a checklist. Here's my tip. Always have a checklist. And there's one there for you, and if you don't like that one, you can find them in lots of different places. They are at the Alliance. For student activities, they're also in Difference Makers and there are other places. CADA's obviously got them and sent them in there. Thanks.
Do I get that right? And my last tip for developing strong leaders, and this comes from the book The Outliers also, as I thought this was really interesting, is that they compared people once again, and sometimes the only difference between someone who had become successful versus someone who had not was that they were given opportunities. Both sides willing to work hard, both sides as bright as could be, but given opportunities. So I just wanted to first of all say thank you, because that is your job, is that you have given them opportunities to become experts. And so my best phone call of all time was from an ASB advisor who said, we have a group of kids who are about to do the CST STAR testing. They're basic and below basic, and we just want to do some training to see if they can score better. So I was trying to decide what to do, and he said, no, I want you to do the exact same leadership training that you do for the leadership kids. So I did, and they had done other things with their schools too, but the principal, when he eventually called after they were done, they had scored 24 points higher on their STAR testing. And they had a goal of 10, but all I could think of was, thank goodness for that ASB advisor who gave them that opportunity.
So if you want higher test scores, hire Sandy. If you want your people to cry, hire Tyler. If you want them to have good assemblies, hire Mike. Bobby, you and I got to find a job, man.
Hey, it says resource to everywhere. Kids have got the coolest stuff. My kids had a party about 2 years ago at our house, and they said, let's play murder in the dark. I'm like, uh-oh. And all of a sudden their friends were like, what are we going to do? They said, okay, we're going to turn out the lights. You have to stay downstairs, and then one person's going to be picked as the murderer. We don't know who it is. And then they have to walk around in the dark, and they just grab someone's arm and pull it like this, and that person has to count to 3 and collapse. As soon as someone finds the body laying on the floor, then we all yell, murder in the dark! We turn on the lights, and we have to try to figure out who the murderer is. The kids were screaming and yelling for the next 2 hours. No alcohol, no drugs, just pure fun. Talk to your kids. They got the coolest stuff. Listen to them and tie them into team builders. Your kids have got so many cool resources. At least mine do. Good luck.
Celebrations are an important part of successful schools that value relationships. We celebrate the things that we value. We celebrate high test scores. We celebrate victories. We celebrate championships. We also need to celebrate the arts. We need to celebrate by having Artist of the Week, Musician of the Week, Character Count Student of the Week. Another way that we can celebrate is with our faculty. I got a great idea from Paul Chalinsky, our new president coming in a few years ago. We're in San Diego sitting around having dinner, and he told me about at his school, they have an apple that they give each month. And the teachers pick who gets that apple. And the way they pick it is, I may give it to Tyler this month, and then next month Tyler decides who he's going to give it to. And Tyler writes a speech about who he's going to give it to. It completely takes the administration, there's no voting, everything is out of it. It's up to the person that received the apple to pass the apple on. We went to the apple farm in San Luis Obispo and bought crates of wooden apples, and we give it to the teachers. Great idea. Celebrate at your schools. Thank you so much for this opportunity today.
Oh, you're good. For the 60th point in 63 minutes, telling stories. I encourage you to teach your student leaders the value of telling a story. And not only teach them to tell the stories, but give them opportunities. Tell them morning announcements are a chance to tell a 20-minute story about something that adds credibility and builds tradition. Send them to the classrooms, after an assembly, for example, with a gift, small gift for all the teachers. And when they go in, they interrupt class, they make a presentation to that teacher. This is just to thank you for giving up your class time, for being there. By the way, yesterday, we want you to know there was a student who was at the assembly, and then have them tell the story. Storytelling is incredibly powerful, as we've been saying. As this is the last, I've been given the joy of summing everything up. And what we're all trying to say to you today is, draw near and make friends with a proctologist. We hope this has been beneficial. Mike is going to close this thing up. God bless you.
Here's the official close for this. If you like this, you should give Cindy a round of applause. It was her idea. Now, on behalf of your august panel, we've got this message for you. You do not have to go home, but you can stay here. So you need to get over to session number 7. And if you haven't had your picture made, for heaven's sakes, find Taylor. Thanks for coming.